Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group. This time with our roundtable and our partner, Veterans Legislative Voice, with our ASU correspondent, Stephanie Kalota. Today is Saturday, September 30th, 2023. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Arnold Productions. And once again, we have Stephanie with us. How you doing, Stephanie?
Oh, my goodness, Sean. All the news is coming very quickly, and it's happening very last minute, so I'm trying to catch up.
So I know about a few hours ago, the House passed a 45-day funding plan to send it to the Senate, and it looks like Mitch McConnell and Schumer are both together, and it looks like they're agreeing to pass this thing. So what's the latest news on that?
Oof. Well, I mean, I just got a hold of this bill. It's 71 pages. I feel just like some of the Democrats who were complaining about not having the chance to read it before they get to vote on it, because that was a big thing of contention earlier today. So, it's happening very last minute. We'll see if the Senate is going to have a vote on it very quickly. I keep refreshing my website, the webpage on C-SPAN and Congress.gov, so we might have a late night vote on it, which, cross our fingers, will keep the government running for a little bit.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier. A lot of people don't understand or realize that it's more than just national parks and monuments that we're talking about when we shut down the government.
Yeah, it's SNAP benefits. It's it's military pay. It's going to affect veterans, even though most not might even see it, because the VA hospitals will keep running, but some of the administrative side will shut down if there is a government shutdown.
And then also we got Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, like you mentioned, SNAP benefits. So why do we keep going through the same story over and over again? Because this happens more often than not. It seems like when we have a budget due October 1st, and we very seldom ever get a budget by October 1st.
No, 3 times in the last 47 years we've ever made it before, and I think the last one was in '97.
Wow.
So I mean, it's not that great. But the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security the payments will stay unaffected, as well as VA disability. They used to be in part of the issue, but they've now made that mandatory, so that we won't see that happening to anybody just yet. If this was the government ceiling, the debt ceiling issues, yes, we would have had an issue. But that's different with a government shutdown.
And then tell us also about when the last shutdown we had was back in 2018 with Trump. It lasted 34 days. Did we learn anything from that shutdown?
That we actually lost a good amount of money. I mean, billions of dollars. Because, we do mention the national parks. National parks charge a fee to come in, and that helps run the parks and also other things. And so we lose out on that money. By the way, Joshua Tree in California, when they were basically shut down, people still kept going and actually destroyed parts of the nature and natural environment, because they started just going right through, hitting areas that they could actually get through, and destroying part of the park.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really horrible.
So, yeah, it's really frustrating. Now, for the Veterans Day, we'll see it in a few ways. If we do have a government shutdown, so those that you've heard of vocational rehabilitation, and there's other job benefits that the VA can provide, training, what have you. Counseling for that would be shut down. The government GI Bill benefits hotline would be shut down if there's a government shutdown.
Wow.
So you can't call that hotline if you're having an issue with your school, trying to get paid on your tuition.
Are there any parts of the VA that shuts down?
The VA regional offices, so those that would be managing the claims processing for VA disability benefits, those probably would be impacted. The national cemeteries won't. The applications and everything will still be accepted and processed. So that part will be okay.
I always wondered too, because I know during a few shutdowns, military members did not get paid. Like paychecks had stopped, but you still got to
Yeah.
you're still on active duty. You still got to do what you got to do. You still got to do your drill, things like that. So
Yeah.
how was back pay handled?
Back pay would usually happen, gosh, within like a week or two after the government comes back. From what I remember, when I was a reservist, we would actually not have our drill weekends. When we had a couple of continuing resolutions lapse, we've actually gotten the call the week of the drill weekend, and they're like, well, don't come in. We'll let you know when you can.
I think the biggest fear for a lot of vets is they fear that when they go to the VA that they're not going to be able to go to the hospital, or if there's not going to be any doctors there.
Right. No, that will still be fully staffed. They will be okay. So definitely keep going to the hospital when you need to keep going to the hospital. Be on top of that. If you have to go to a non-VA hospital, still call within 3 days to call the VA and let them know that this happened, because you get 3 days to tell them, and still try to get those things processed. From what I can find, that will still be open as well.
And then, so when you went through this, tell us more about your experience. 'Cause it was pretty severe for you, because you had a lot of things going on in your life at the time when you went through your government shutdown back in the day.
Right, yeah. In 2013, when the government shut down, we also were just going through the furloughs. We had to cut our days back. I think we lost about 45 days of work or something like that in 2013. And then I had just moved to Washington State, and so you spend a lot of money when you move. And the government shutdown happened October 1st. We were sent home, and then after about 3.5 days, we were called back in, and we were allowed to continue working, which was great. And then we were back paid, even for those 3 days. So it can happen for people, but for government contractors, more likely than not, you're not going to be paid. You will be furloughed, and then you won't be back paid.
Wow.
Yeah, my aunt was a government contractor with USDA, and she was not back paid at all in 2013 or 2018. It was really frustrating. TSA agents, for example, during the 2018 government shutdown, they were still having to work, and they were not paid for those 34, 35 days. So people started quitting to find other jobs that will not be impacted by a government shutdown. And then people were also calling in sick, so they can try to find another way to get some money.
That's wild. So
yes.
So what's going on the political landscape now with this shutdown still imminent, but it looks like we hopefully will avert it if everything goes as we hope. How does the McCarthy look now as a representative and trying to lead the House as a leader? Is he in danger?
Very possible, because he had to compromise with things for the continuing resolution. And I mean, although the Ukraine aid money was not included in the CR, there has been a bump up on the federal disaster relief funding. So that was good, because that will help people in Hawaii, those that were impacted by Idalia in nearby me in Florida, and in other locations. So that hopefully will be okay. But the thing is that he had a compromise with Democrats, and some hardliner extreme right does not take that very lightly. And I mean, that's a very historical thing going back to the Tea Party a decade ago. People that had compromised or worked bipartisan things with across the aisle, they've actually been penalized and voted out.
Wow.
For doing that. So it can be very risky nowadays.
Is that minority still? Cause first of all, whatever happened to the Tea Party? Are they still alive and kicking, or are they? What's going on with them?
That one I'm not quite sure of. I mean, there's a few things that had really hurt the Tea Party, especially finding out who was funding the Tea Party, and that they pretty much, those that were running for it under that party, was that they were having a lot of issues because they didn't understand the politics. They were not legislative people in the state, city, what have you, so they didn't have a whole lot of background. And that actually hurt them in the long run, was because they basically couldn't really help a whole lot of things, and they weren't that effective.
And that's one thing I see as well, is that you have a lot of people who want to change government, but they have no idea how government actually operates. So they can't get anything done.
Right, and that's a big thing. I mean, I've been trying to help out a few House representatives that I know across the, aisle of what I'm registered in, and because they didn't understand of how government shutdowns can impact Reserve or National Guard people. If you miss one single drill, if it's a particular drill weekend, that can hurt your unit readiness between 25% and 60%. Because unit readiness for Army Reserve and National Guard and all the other reserve units, you have to be qualified in your weapons, at least annually once a year. It expires automatically on the databases that they use to maintain. You have to have medical evaluations every year, and that has to be, updated. Those type of things. A lot of units schedule big drill weekends with weapons qualification, with the health evaluations in a drill weekend to get everybody done. And if we have a government shutdown, that's canceled. And that is really ineffective when it comes to our unit readiness. I've seen people fired for having their unit readiness drop even just 20%. And it can be really scary because these numbers go all the way up to the president. It goes through the Pentagon. They examine it for the Reserve and National Guard units. Majority of them are examined every quarter. For those units that are up for deployments, they are examined every month. And then for those units, they also have to brief their chain of command every spring. Anywhere from January to May, they basically have to brief their numbers and explain why their numbers suck.
And that's rough.
And that's when they get fired. And these units need the medical readiness. They need the effective numbers there so they can deploy. They'll be able to have the manning that they need to actually do their mission. And you need to have drill weekends to be able to get that stuff done.
So what's the path forward? What do we need to do to kind of get Congress more active and working together as such as we've done today? Is this a turning point in any way because Republicans and Democrats are starting to realize, hey, we can't be extremists. We have to compromise on something to get something done for the country?
That I think is really starting to show now. The polarization, especially through media. I mean, it happens. Certain polarization of media can really change the temperature and the motives of things and what people want. And for people to understand that we can't have this infighting every time we have to do the government funding, it's crazy. And supposedly, from what I've been hearing, that there was actually an agreement about the government funding back when Biden and McCarthy were handling the debt ceiling. And some people that were inside the room when those agreements happened are saying that McCarthy and the GOP reneged on that deal. So because, honestly, McCarthy had gotten a lot of hate and discontent because of the deals he made with the debt ceiling. So these type of things happen. It can really cause a lot of issues. We need to compromise. We need to agree on some things. We need to be able to find an even ground on stuff to try to get stuff passed. I mean, infighting doesn't solve anything. And we have to compromise, and you have to be statesmen. We need to get back to the age of the statesman.
Yeah, because once upon a time, I remember, and this is ironic because I looked it up, under Ronald Reagan, and he had a really good relationship with Tip O'Neill, Democrat, and they got a lot of stuff done. But under his tenure, I think he had the most shutdowns in the last 20, 30 years, something like that, during his administration. I think like four of them.
By number of government shutdowns, yes, but his shutdowns, I believe, were like 24 hours.
Yeah,
to 48 hours. It wasn't
3 days. Some of them, they weren't like really long.
Yeah, they weren't very long, but I mean, unlike 35 days under Trump, I mean, it's nothing like that because that broke the record there. So yes, those things can happen. We've had a number. I think I lost count on the amount of continuing resolutions we've had in the past decade. I think the number was like 47 or something like that when I last counted, which can work. We have short-term agreements, that's fine, but it can cause a lot of numbness and exhaustion with everything, and people stop listening, and they stop tuning in, and they start tuning out, and we can't have that. When people fight so much, that's when people tune out too. And so many places the talk of politics is banned because there's so much infighting and frustration and hate thrown and violence because of just the talk of politics. And we need to get away from that so that we can have healthy conversations about politics.
Were there anything that you can see that any good talking points that the Republicans had in opposition to why they wanted to delay or not pass this spending bill?
For a few things. Trying to remember back to that. Honestly, it's kind of hard to narrow down because they actually kept changing their minds on different things. Because at first they weren't so against the Ukraine aid, and then some of them were against the Ukraine aid. So it's been a little bit of back and forth with that. It's a little bit of frustration when it comes to other things that has to do with Head Start, with that program that actually is still running since the Obama administration. Other things like that has been trying to fight a lot of issues that's been going through. So it's kind of hard to narrow down this particular one because they just keep changing whatever that they're angry about.
It seems the biggest thing that they talk about is always about trying to cut spending, but it's vague when they say that. But at the same time, when they have control of the House or even the White House, they do the same thing. They spend a lot of money.
Yes, and then they also only cut spending for things like tax cuts, but the tax cuts towards the ultra-rich, which we know, trickle-down economics does not work. Right. So those type of things is what we're really trying to work on. I mean, for example, the infrastructure bill that a lot of Republicans hated and, threw a lot of hate towards, but then they're celebrating. They go to wherever the infrastructure bill is actually going to start, digging shovels in the ground in their hometown, and they're celebrating the infrastructure bill. So it's a little frustrating sometimes when those things happen. We just got to take it as we can and not be so argumentative and then not stoop down to the negative level.
Wow. Next time when you come back, I got to get your take on the debates, the Republican debates, and see how that is shaping up and what it looks like for Trump with his legal issues and things like that. But thanks for your time once again. Got to get information. Hopefully we'll keep our eyes peeled and see what is going on with this bill if it gets passed, and hopefully the government does not shut down. Thank you for your time, Stephanie.
All right. Thank you. All right.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.